Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I want to thank everybody for joining us here today with the Colorado Corn Administrative Committee's monthly webinar. We've got two great guests with us today, and Eric Snodgrass and Fred Raish. And so without further ado, we're going to get started. First with Eric Snodgrass to give us kind of an outlook on what the weather for Colorado and the Corn Belt is going to be like this growing season. Eric Snodgrass is a science fellow and principal atmospheric scientist for Nutrien Ag Solutions, where he develops predictive analytical software solutions to manage weather risk for global production agriculture. He provides frequent weather updates that focus on how high impact weather events influence global agricultural productivity, and his current research uses machine learning to better understand field level weather impacts on yields in the US and increase confidence in long range weather prediction. He presents this research as a featured speaker on over 120 conferences annually, so we are very blessed to have him with us today. And where his logistical guidance and solutions to weather-sensitive financial institutions, farmers, commodity traders, and other stakeholders. Snodgrass is a co-founder of the Global Weather and Climate Logistics LLC and Agribel Incorporated, which were both acquired by Nutrien Solutions in 2018. So without further ado, we're going to let Eric take it away. I'm going to turn the screen over to him. And thank you so much for being with us today, Eric. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me here, and certainly 2021 is shaping up to be a very interesting year to be talking about here with respect to production across the country. So while we're going to stay pretty well focused on things that have happened and are going to happen in Colorado, we're going to stretch this out and look at the entirety of the Corn Belt just to kind of give some perspective on how the bigger pieces that are moving right now in terms of weather, climate, things like this are going to be impacting what we do. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. And what I would like to get is just a quick verbal that you can see my screen. And if you can see it, we'll get going. Is it showing up for everybody?
Good to go.
All right. So we have had some pretty spectacular storms on the high plains so far this year. And this is one taken by a colleague of mine, Andrew Pritchard. He works for me here at Nutrien Ag Solutions. And we got what we call an LP, a low precipitating supercell. It's one of those ones where you can just see a tremendous amount of structure from the cloud base here all the way to the anvil cloud at the very top. And this one was taken with a good shot at lightning. And in the background, you can faintly see some stars back there too. So just an amazing view here of what the atmosphere is capable of producing. This storm was probably 50,000 feet tall. And was just spinning its way through parts of the high plains. And this has been something we have seen a lot this year. And this is the big reason why. We're going to do a few little weather 101 segments here. So let's get started with this one. The time period here is May 15th to the 24th. In other words, the last couple of weeks. And this is why we've seen so much, well, severe weather, so many storms lately. Right here, whoops, sorry, let's go back and try that again. Right in through this area right here, we have had a large area of higher atmospheric pressure become established. And it's basically opened up the Gulf of Mexico for a lot of moisture transport, and the flow around it's just been bringing that moisture farther and farther to the north towards us. And as a result, even looking over the last 7 days, this is how much rainfall we've measured with our radar network and also with our rain gauges. Some places down in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, I mean, we've had places down here that are sitting like over 1,000% of normal rainfall in the last 2 weeks. And just over the last week, look at the streaks going right here through Colorado. Those are all some of those big thunderstorms that have had that north to south trajectory on them. Now, first couple of big storms I saw this year were still spinning around in some drier air. And this was a large dust devil we got a good video of here that went through parts of eastern Colorado, crossed right in front of the road. And this guy, he could have driven right through that and been perfectly fine. It's just a large dust devil. It's not, a supercell tornadic vortex here, but just amazing to see the atmosphere spinning like this across Colorado. Now, in the last 3 days, some of our storms have been pretty good at putting down some hail. And we've had quite a bit of that so far this year. Just want to show you what we've seen. These are streaks here of maximum estimated hail size. Some of these stones have been 2 to 3 inches in size here across parts of Colorado, and also extending down to the high plains in New Mexico, Texas, and clear north into parts of Montana and the Dakotas. Just a lot of hail lately. And I want to show you something kind of cool you can learn about hail detection. We all have access to radar data. It's free in this country, which is great. And this is an animation from my favorite radar app. It's called Radar Scope. all one word, a radar scope. It does cost a little bit of money, but it's the best radar app that's out there. Now we are in northern Colorado, right on the border with Wyoming. So here's Cheyenne, and the radar is located in Cheyenne. And these storms that kind of came from Greeley and then headed their way into Wyoming, you see the pinks and purples. In fact, let me just pause it and show you what I'm talking about. I just slide this back. Look right here as this came out of northern Colorado and crosses the border. That area right in through there where the pink is showing up, that would be where we've got, I believe this is Wells County. We had some hail in this, and that pink indicates where the radar has a distinct break in the color bar for where we start to detect some hail. So these nasty storms rolled through, and got some pictures what some of that hail looked like, a couple of baseballs there. So just for reference, hailstones that large, they fall at a speed between 100 and 130 miles an hour. So they're basically falling from the sky faster than major league pitchers can toss them. And as they come flying through, they can do a tremendous amount of damage. Now today, all of that risk is going to be a little bit farther to our east. This is a great resource. I want everybody checking this out all summer long. It's spc.noaa.gov. SP stands for Storm Prediction Center. And they put out maps like this with these 6 different categories of severe weather. And this shading right into here corresponds to a moderate risk. That's the second to highest risk. So we're over in Kansas and Nebraska today with respect to that severe storm risk. And we're talking about some extremely large hail possible out of some of these storms. And I was watching some satellite imagery just before we got on today of one of those storms that blew up right here near Goodland. So it's on the other side of our border today, but you know what, shoot, I'm gonna go look at this just because I'm interested here. Let me escape out of this real quick because I want to get the latest update here. Yeah, so this storm still has a severe thunderstorm warning on it. And can you all see the pink and purple showing up in there? That would be the hail core of that thunderstorm. So that one's already putting down some big hail. And come down here, we have another storm that's just about to cross the interstate here. And that one also, you can see the pink and purple inside of it as well. Boy, I'm thinking about this. I'm going to open up a tool that I like to use so I can draw on my screen here a little bit as well. So yeah, this are big storms that are rolling through the plains here in Kansas today. Well, what's most important about all of this is when we look back over the last few months here. So from March 1st to May 26th, it was parts of the plains, the high plains that got what we call the miracle March that the West Coast wanted. Now, what are you looking at here? So this map shows you, again, between March 1st and March 26th, total precipitation rank by climate district. Now we got 129 years in the data set. It goes back to 1893. So the smaller the number, the wetter it's been, the higher the number, the drier it's been. And the West Coast has had an extremely dry spring compared to normal, whereas we have had a lot of precipitation here. And that precipitation has gone a long way to revive the soil. But before I leave this image, you need to look at a couple other pockets here. High plains, coming down through parts of Minnesota, Iowa, Northern Illinois, Wisconsin, lower Michigan. It just rained there this morning for the first time in almost 40 days of decent moisture. And the East Coast, the Carolinas, that corn crop out there is getting burned up fast because it's near record dryness. So we've been one of the, garden spots thinking about this early season moisture return. And if you look at what that top soil moisture looks like, now this is a little deeper than just the top. This is the top 16 inches. You can see that throughout the high plains, southern plains, there's a lot of areas that are between 70 and 100% saturated in the top 40 centimeters or 16 inches. But the Red River Valley of the North through northern Iowa, and then, just a large swath here in the eastern part of the country, very, very dry. And we're going to come back to this image in a few moments here to have a bit more of a discussion. So moisture right now is good. And what's great about that is look at what we've done to our drought monitor. We have beat back the drought that was firmly established here after last year's incredibly dry summer and fall. And now we can see that we've even cleared ourselves of drought in parts of northeastern Colorado. But don't be fooled, just on our doorstep to the west in the Great Basin back to California, it's extremely dry. It's dry south of us, and it's dry far to the north of us as well. We still have over half the country in some stage of drought, but take a look at this map. Over the last 12 weeks, you're looking here at a map that shows drought monitor class change. So improvements are in these shades, degradation are in these shades. And we have some places here that are looking at, in parts of the high plains, up to a 4-class improvement in drought. And that's a rare thing for us to get this much spring moisture. So love to be able to share that with you and share some good news, because I was giving a talk the other day in California, in San Diego. That was terrible. I had to tell the folks about the extensive drought there. Had a talk earlier this week in Michigan, 1 in North Dakota, and 2 in North Carolina. And those are all places that are really suffering from some serious drought. Now, as we start to just take what we've covered in the first 5 or 6 minutes here and push it out into a forecast, I would like to share with you how I do weather forecasting, because I'm going to give you some free resources at the end of this presentation that you can all use to aid in your weather forecasting. I tend to rely on these 2 world-class forecast centers, one here in the United States. It's called INSEP, although I believe they just renamed themselves to NCEI, National Center for Environmental Information, and that's in the US. And then across the pond, the Europeans have the ECMWF, or we commonly call it the European model. It is the best in the business. Now, our forecast accuracy, I need everyone to listen carefully on this. You have a graphic down here from a study done on the best weather forecasting model in the world, the ECMWF. And it shows since the 1980s, that's the x-axis, up to 2018 when the study was published, the skill score of a 3-day, 5-day, 7-day, and 10-day forecast. And what you can see is our skills have gone up considerably, such that 5-day forecasts are generally about 92% accurate on finding the pattern. 7-day forecasts, almost 80%. But notice how quickly things drop off as you get to that 10-day and beyond forecast. You see, once you get out there beyond 10 days, pinpointing your field level weather, pinpointing even a climate district's weather is extremely challenging. But we have some new solutions and techniques that are helping to improve this. This is some research that I work on a lot at Nutrien, but these major forecasting centers are doing it too. You can see it if I just show you last year. This was the forecast path of Hurricane Isaias after it came off of the island of Hispaniola. You see, what we've discovered is one of the biggest sources of error in the models is lack of really good initial conditions. In other words, when the model starts, does it truly have the weather represented well that's currently happening before we tell it to predict the future? And the answer is it doesn't. We just don't have coverage of weather data everywhere. But what you can see here is that if we run the model again and again and again and again, each time changing a little bit about it, we can use each model run to hone in on the likelihood of an event. And that's what you've got down here, 51 different simulations, which when averaged do a better job than any individual model run on telling us what's going to happen. So with that as a backdrop, let's talk about the remainder of spring. Because over the next 10 days, take a look at this. This is using the European model in ensemble mode, running it 51 times and telling you, using all 51 simulations, what's the probability of getting an inch of rainfall through the next 10 days. And the color bar right down here at the bottom, there's 50% to 100%. Now, what you can see is exactly what I can see, and that is the models are keeping the Gulf of Mexico open and pouring that moisture farther to the north. And this is some very bearish news for the markets when you start to see that where we've recently had plenty of rain over in the high plains of Colorado, and where we're going to get rain all the way over through Indiana, Ohio, into the Northeast, things are just looking, well, they're looking wet. And if you look at an individual model run, you get this. This is what we got this morning from the European model. It is a map, a little bit different color bar here, but it shows you total inches of precipitation being forecast. So there's a pretty hard line right there on the northward extent of this. So if you're in the Red River Valley of the North, the Canadian Prairie, these are areas we're not going to be expecting much precipitation. But coming from Texas to Nebraska and South Dakota, through Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, I mean, that area is prime. Let's go back to that real quick. That area is prime growing area right in through here, right? And we're about to just see quite a bit of precipitation. Now, what's unfortunate is I've had people call me. Got a guy call me yesterday. He says, "Does this mean the crop is made?" And I just answered him on the phone. I said, "Dude, this is total rainfall through June 1st. We have June, July, August still to go through this pattern. And even though you dump a bunch of rain on it right now, this does not alleviate any sort of longer term risk with respect to drought, given the subsoil moisture is what it is." We're going to look at that again in a few moments. But now going back to the ensemble technique, let me show you what week 2 looks like. Now, this map doesn't tell you how much rainfall you're going to get. What this map tells you is it going to be more or less than normal? So as we go out into week 2, we do see that parts of the central and northern plains getting into the western Corn Belt are a little drier. It remains wet through the mid-south. And these folks over here couldn't be happier that rain is forecast to return above normal rain at that. And that gets you all the way out to June the 9th. That would be where the week 2 forecast ends. Now, again, this is an ensemble technique where we're just looking at all the different forecast members, averaging them and seeing what they produce. But as you can tell, it's nearly impossible beyond about day 7 to give you a field level accurate and skillful forecast. So don't expect it, to be honest with you. This is the way by which we should be looking at our weather forecasts. I'll say this, I don't see any reason for these storms to stop running up the high plains though. And that's why you can still see these blotches of green running right up here along the Front Range. So continue to get out there and see those big storms as they come up. And if you don't mind, take a few pictures and send them to me. I gave you my email address at the beginning of this. It's eric.snodgrass@nutrien.com. Give it to me because I'll put them in my talks and put them in my weather forecasts. I love a good storm picture. All right, let's talk near-term temperatures. Now, from April 1 through March 19th, or no, through May 19th, that's when the pattern book was after May 19th. So April 1 to May 19th, we had been pretty chilly. You can see about the only place in the country that had some above average temperatures was in the desert in the Southwest through California. The majority of the midsection of the country was cool. And I'll be honest with everybody in this call, did I forecast that it was going to look like this in March? In other words, in March, did I think April was going to be this cool? Not a chance. In fact, we thought April was going to be warm, and it was through the first 8 or 9 days. And then after that, the pattern just tanked, and we brought in some pretty cold air through the midsection of the country. So we know what's going on in Colorado with the rain, but we've been missing out on some heat too. This map shows you right here what from April 1st through a couple days ago, what our growing degree day, based on the corn formula here, our growing degree day anomalies look like. So we're sitting 50 to some places almost 100 GDUs below normal. And if you think that it takes what, about 120 to get a crop to emerge, it's been a slow go of it. And we've had some delays in planting given how wet things have been in the high plains. Outside of that though, this temperature pattern has been changing pretty quickly. We've warmed up as of late, but let's take a look at the forecast going through the next 5 days. We do have a pretty sizable front that's coming through, and it is going to drop those temperatures back off over the next 5 days. This particular map shows you the 5-day temperature anomaly map. Now, as you get over here into the high plains, we're looking much closer to the normal than we do in the central and northern plains and the Corn Belt. And the extreme heat that is over the southeast this week, where we're going to be getting triple-digit heat down here, it moves out as well. Big issue to be thinking about. Here in North Dakota, Red River Valley of the North, frost threat tomorrow morning. Frost threat Friday morning. So we got a issue there with a crop that got planted into some dust. And now we're going to hit it with a frost pretty late in the year here at the end of May. Beyond that though, take a look at the shift that is happening here as we get into the month of June. You can already see the colder air is fading, but I want to make a point here. This cooler weather that you see in place here between day 5 and 10, so this gets you out there about 10 days from now, is primarily driven by thunderstorms and cloud cover. The West is just cranking in temperatures. Some places over 20 degrees Fahrenheit on average warmer than normal, which means we're going to be getting those triple digits deep through the Central Valley of California, clear to the northwestern part of the United States. And there's a transition that's happening in this forecast I want to be sharing with you. So when you think about what I'm about to share with you, though, I would like to make a very solid point as we transition here toward the end of what I want to talk to you about. What are the limits of predictability? Can we predict high impact events long in advance? Well, I'm going to give you 2 examples and then we'll get to the long range forecast just so that this is very, very clear. We all remember the Arctic outbreak we had in February. When did we know it was going to happen? Well, I'll show you a report. I'm going to give you access to this report in a few moments here. Back on January 15th, I began a discussion about how the long range models were beginning to sense some really cold air coming out of the Canadian prairie. In my graphics, I said this could get through the plains, but at that point, did I think it could get clear to Mexico? Nope, I sure didn't, and nobody did. But we knew the cold air was there. We then fast forward to the beginning of February. Some of our near-term models came out and said, wow, that cold air is going to dip pretty far to the south in the middle part of February. But even at that point, the models did not see that the true extent of it was going to be like this when it was all said and done. February 5th to 15th, that map on the right there, that's not a forecast map. That's what actually happened. And that cold air went driving all the way down to Texas, which, if you remember, all the burst pipes and the buildings, the major damage to the infrastructure. Here's a couple of burst pipes in a gas station and a parking garage covering that SUV with probably 2 or 3 tons worth of ice. Just incredible. And by the way, I want to give you a statistic on this. Our most expensive weather disasters in US history, they've all been hurricanes. They're listed here from number 1 to number 6. Where we currently think the Arctic outbreak of this February is going to be is the new number 2. It may have had a price tag in excess of $150 billion, but we don't know yet, still adding that up. But what you saw here is that even as much as 4 weeks before it happened, we knew it was going to go cold in mid-February, but I couldn't have told you the extent. Let me give you another example. Last year, we had this massive flash drought scenario that set up from Illinois to Nebraska, through Colorado, Utah, Arizona. Now, did we know it was going to look like that early? Well, I tossed in Danny DeVito over there shaking his head, because this is what the forecast looked like. I put this in a report on May the 1st for June, July, and August. We did not see indications. In fact, you see green here that this was going to be a massive drought summer. You see, that just tells you what the limits of prediction are for us. Maybe another quick example. Remember the derecho that went right through parts of Iowa? I surveyed that damage, by the way. This derecho was incredible in the amount of destruction it did. As that squall line raced right there along I-80 and a little bit north of it, it produced 130 mile an hour wind gusts. I just traveled to Cedar Rapids 6 weeks ago, and the tree damage is extensive across this area. Now, total damage done from this? Well, I'll put it to you here. I had 8.5 million acres of destroyed land, as I could see from satellite. When did we know it was going to be there? 3 days before, I put out a forecast saying the risk of severe storms in this part of the Corn Belt was elevated. But even the morning of, I have a video that I recorded at 3 o'clock in the morning, the day this happened. It was a Monday. And all that I said was, it looks as though the storms that are in South Dakota and Nebraska are going to organize once they cross the river and potentially produce a damaging squall line. Did I say it was going to be an $8 billion disaster? I had no idea. You see, this is the level of predictability that we have. We do know climatologically that that is an area that gets a lot of those types of storms in through there, but to be able to pin that down exactly is nearly impossible. So we put it all together. Your heat wave here was one of the 22 different billion-dollar weather disasters, but right in through there, that was the derecho event. So drought for you, severe weather in the central Corn Belt, it was a rough year last year. But something important to know, when it comes to the May through August precipitation we get in the Corn Belt, 60% of it comes from squall lines. So we love them and we hate them. We love them because they deliver rain. We hate them because they can destroy our ground. So let's finish this out with a longer term view here. June 9th through July the 9th. Look at the temperature map over there on the left. The likelihood of us staying above normal in temperatures is relatively high. We're going to have a cool time period in the near term, but it's going to go back over warm pretty quickly and maintain that warmer bias. You then start to see that the longer range models attempt to dry things out once we get past mid-June. So the high plains are looking drier, whereas much more scattered storm activity is expected east of you, okay? So this could be a risk moving forward with another flash drought scenario. So I'm gonna come back to this map and tell you that the subsoil moisture, now looking down 3 feet, is very good right now. And that'll carry us for a while, especially since we do have more rainfall that's coming. But as we look out here longer term into summer, we have to be very careful about the transition in the jet stream. So my remaining 5 or 6 minutes here, let's talk about that longer term prediction. And if you have some questions about other places around the world, I'll cover those in the question and answer. But January, this map with the colors tells you where the jet stream is. It usually screams off the Pacific, splits over the west, and comes right back together here to the North Atlantic. By the time we get to July, the jet stream goes from this monster to that. Weak, slow, and to the north. And my only job is to tell you if the ridge in the flow will be here at the 100th meridian, will it be at the 105th or 110th, will it be at the 95th? because wherever it sits, the heat is underneath it. Now, I looked at the whole Corn Belt for this analysis. These really good yielding years, the ridge is way back here on the spine of the Rockies. And the flow is south. The jet stream winds are strong into the south. And it just keeps going and going and going. When we have drought, that ridge shifts in the middle part of the country. The jet stream goes north of the 49th parallel. We get a ridge here, and a ridge right there. And everything gets blocked up and we get hot and dry. Are there any indicators of when that happens? You better believe it. And it's right here. If you watch my daily updates, we talk a lot about the cold water that's off the Pacific. It has been, and do not use this year as an analog, but it has been since 2012 that I've seen this much cold water in this area. Now that's called the negative phase of the Pacific Meridional Mode, PMM. And why we talk about that is because we've been keeping track of it for a very long time. And what you've got here is the Pacific Meridional Mode since 1980. There's times when it's well above normal and times when it drops down, and above normal drops down. It's been above normal since 2013. And right now it's coming down here. Now, I didn't do this for Colorado because of the difference between irrigated corn and non-irrigated corn or dryland farming. So I put this in for Iowa, which doesn't irrigate. I want you to see this. Iowa's corn yields have been overlaid. And you can just stare at it and see that some of the best Iowa corn yield years are when there's a positive PMM. We have a negative PMM right now. And that generally means that in through this area, we tend to have risk of summer droughts and we tend to have risk of summer heat. Now you're going, wait a minute, those colors look backwards. Yeah, they are, because this is the correlation with positive PMM. We have a negative. So putting that all together, does El Nino have anything to do with it? Not this year. El Nino, La Nina, the La Nina we had last fall is fading back to zero. There's spread in this, but no big El Nino is being forecast or big La Nina is being forecast. It's expected to stay neutral. So here's where I want to get to, and then we'll wrap this up. June, July, and August, there is risk through the plains in this area stretching back to the northwest of quite a bit of summer heat. And even though the models are attempting to revive an active southwestern monsoon, I'm concerned about the redevelopment of drought later, not only in the high plains, but in the central plains as well. This is the European model's forecast for summer. It is echoed in the NMME, the N, and that acronym stands for national. These are models run in the United States. They're also forecasting well above average temperatures here and dryness in this area. Now, are these models super accurate? No, they're not, but they've been consistent with this forecast, which lends credibility to it. This group out of Columbia University produces a statistical forecast. And what they show is that the high plains to the northwest are favoring drier, with the greatest heat concentrated right on the Four Corners states. So even though we've had this great start to the season, what you need to think about as I interpret these graphics for you is this, and this only. Don't interpret more than what I'm going to say to you. There is elevated risk of drought and heat this summer for us in the high plains. But I didn't say a slam dunk, it's going to be this way. There's just elevated risk based upon these long range forecasts. And I'm going to be totally honest with you. If I knew exactly what was going to happen, Nick could have never gotten me on the call today. And what I'm trying to tell you is nobody truly knows how this summer is going to set up. We'll get a better and better idea of it as each week goes on. And that's why I want to give you something as I wrap up today, because I see I'm at 1:30 my time. So let me do this. And I want to zip right down here and share with you this slide. What I've got here is I produce a free, this is totally free, no obligation, unsubscribe at any time kind of thing. That web link at the top there, info.nutrien.com/Snodgrass, that's my last name. There is an underscore right there, weather. If you sign up for this with that web link, I'll just put your email in it, you'll get my daily weather intelligence report. What you get is a series of maps plus a report right here that shows you in videos and quick analysis what's going on. I include all of the maps you saw today, plus we look at Brazil, we look at the rest of South America, Europe, China, we keep an eye on all of it and provide those critical forecast maps that you need to understand what's going on. Now, I've got 1:31 my time and I do not want to go over today. So I'm going to stop it right here, but I'll tell you something. If you want the latest in South America and China, I'll give you a brand new update about that tomorrow using that particular web link. So with that, I'll stop right there. I got 1:31 local time here. So I want to keep you on track. So we'll finish up there. All right.
All right. Well, thank you so very much there, Eric. That was a lot of information to digest in a very short amount of time. And I have to say that the link that you gave out, I've subscribed to, and I watch your YouTube channel religiously. And it's a great wealth of information for our farmers out there. So thank you. And
Yep.
if you can stick around, we'll see if we can have some time for some questions at the end. So now we have Fred Raish. Fred Raish is a fifth generation Coloradan who grew up on the western slope chasing cattle and sheep and enjoying the San Juan mountain range. After working as an applicator and supervisor for Yuma County Pest Control District and Western U.S. manager for Algiers LLC, Fred went to work for CHS in 2018 as the Agronomy Sales Manager. Since starting it with CHS, Fred's role has expanded to the Regional Supply Coordinator for the Southern region, which covers Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, and Texas. And so without further ado, we're going to welcome Fred Raish to come and talk to us a little bit about his forecast and outlook for chemistry and fertilizer. Take it away, Fred.
Thanks, Nick. Let me share this real quick. See, can you guys see that? Okay. Good afternoon. I appreciate the time, and I always like listening to Eric, and as Nick does as well. I follow that YouTube channel as well, so it's always good to hear Eric. He makes weather interesting, right? So, but we're going to talk a little bit about fertilizer and CPP products, crop protection products. Any questions, please let me know. Seeing how I am sitting in a CHS office and using a CHS slide deck, I have to throw up a forward-looking statement that says anything that I may say is my opinion and not the opinion of CHS. So if it's wrong, you can call me and yell at me. Just don't call CHS and yell at them. As you guys are well aware of, fertilizer has been an ongoing issue this year, and there's numerous reasons why, and we'll get into that here directly. But I'll give you a little outlook on what we're thinking of and what we're seeing within the fertilizer world today. Urea, the price is going to stay firm. The third quarter, there's barges trending higher in value, which should keep the price firm for everybody. The global value is higher, and India is looking to bring in 1 to 1.5 million tons, and they want it shipped by June 30th. That's going to be very difficult for anybody to do as supply is tight in places. So this is right now is keeping that price firm. We believe that India is probably going to take more than that 1.5 million tons, but that's all they've asked for at the moment. AMS prices firm. You're gonna find that the firm price is pretty much across every fertilizer product at the moment, but AMS price is firm. Very tight supply. We may see some loosening up of AMS in July, but it looks like it's going to go back to that tight supply shortly after that. Some plant shutdowns and some mine shutdowns and some other things that are going to impact it. So UAN price firm to high. Again, tight supply. The northern states are going to start to side dress in the next couple of weeks. So we'll figure that's coming, right? That's gonna drive some demand, and then logistics are an issue. We can't find trucks. Barges are tight. Rail cars are tight. There's a couple bridges on the Mississippi River that are shut down right now due to a huge crack on the bridge. Some of you may have seen the picture. They shut the interstate down. They shut the river down at the same time. So we're having issues moving product where it needs to be, and that's trucking issues at the moment. As we all know, you can't hardly find a truck or a truck driver that's not busy, and moving product around is becoming almost impossible. Ammonia, anhydrous, price will stay firm, mainly because side dressing is about to start, and that's pretty normal for this time of year. The one that has went up a ton, I don't know why they all have, but the one that seems to keep going up a ton is phosphates. The price is going to stay firm. MAP and DAP have increased over the past week. In fact, phosphate has overall jumped by about $60 a ton to me in the last 3 weeks. Supply is very tight. Doesn't sound like the supply is going to get any better anytime in the near future. But that's what's driving that. Potash is just steady. Price is just going to stay steady. Again, very tight supply. Near the six-year demand, right? We're about at that high level on price. This is about the highest the price has been over the last 6 years. And Brazil's capturing a premium on their product, because they've got some of their pricing has been a little higher. So they're capturing some import tons that we are not capturing at the moment. So how did we get here on fertilizer? You guys, there's a few things on this list that you're probably tired of hearing about, but when you put it all together, it's how we've got here. Tariffs, there was some lawsuits back and forth and different things between the United States and Russia and Morocco and some other countries, and those tariffs got put on. And during that time, nothing was being shipped, right? That was a small part where it started. Supply versus demand. There's a very tight supply at some of the mines, some of the manufacturing facilities, some of the end facilities, and demand this year has exceeded that supply. Mother Nature, Eric talked about as my counterparts in Texas say, the great freeze of 2021. That you were amazed at how many manufacturing plants, both for fertilizer and CPP, exist in Texas, Georgia, Louisiana. All of those states were impacted at some point in time. COVID, barges, and I've got pictures, barges sitting in Long Beach Port, barges sitting down at NOLA. Can't unload the barges because the employees are gone, the unions were shut down, or for that matter, the state of California was shut down. And then transportation, closure of waterways, those bridges being impacted, trucks, railroad, lack of railroad cars, lack of truck drivers. And then this time of year, we start to get into plant maintenance, because all those plants have to shut down, do some sort of maintenance, and it's scheduled, it's scheduled a year out. And this is no different. So they're starting to shut down to do their maintenance, which then again is going to impact the supply or the availability of those products. And then a nice term that I've got to learn a whole bunch this year is force majeure, right? And this is what you're seeing. So more or less, they're canceling contracts, right, due to an act of nature, uncontrolled by the manufacturer, which then comes to the retailer, right? So I can't get the product, so then I have to go to the grower and do the same thing. Luckily, we haven't canceled any contracts fertilizer-wise. We've had to move some around, but we haven't canceled any. But force majeure seems to be the new hot buzzword when talking to fertilizer manufacturers. And again, I don't necessarily blame them. When there's no product and you have all of these things that have came together to cause these issues, I can see why we're in this position. Now, the question I get a lot is, how long are we going to be in this position? My personal opinion, I do not see prices going down. You may see a dip here in the next 3 weeks, but I don't think you'll see the summer prices you normally see. I don't believe we're going to see, as a retailer, a lesser price for summer fill. I think it'll stay where it's at. And I think we're in this for the next 18 months. 8 months at the minimum, 18 months at the maximum, which takes us well into the next growing season. I know that there's some contracts to growers right now for 2020 product, right? There's a few companies doing that, hit and miss. I would say if you think it's a good deal, I would buy your product moving forward, because I really do not see it going down within the next 8 to 18 months. So shifting gears, and it may not take me 30 minutes, Nick, and I apologize, but you know, we got questions. That's what I was counting on. So shifting gears, looking at CPP, crop protection products. Active ingredient shortage is the name of the game at the moment. The company that I came from was based in Israel. In fact, they're the company who bought Syngenta. And then with Chem China, and did that whole merger shortly after I left. But, you know, based in Israel, had production facilities in Brazil. We brought product out of China. And that's no different than any other company. 98% of your crop protection products in the United States has some ingredient that is coming out of China, India, Israel, or Poland. But China is the big one. It could be an inert ingredient that holds the product together. It could be the active ingredient itself. It doesn't mean that those products are formulated and ready for production necessarily. It could be the active ingredient comes over here, goes to the bulb plant in Georgia, and gets formulated and put in a jug and shipped to whomever the retailer is. So, you know, we all jump on the China bandwagon from time to time, and why, you know, maybe it's a good one to jump on. It's just not them. It comes from other places as well. But the two active ingredients that I'm showing right there, the glufosinate, so your Liberties, Cheetahs, and glyphosates, so, you know, RT3s, Durango, Paramax, most of that active does come from China. And what happened in that region was they had a flood. Well, first they had COVID. Second, they had a flood. One plant burnt down, and this all happened within the same time frame. And it has made those two actives very short. Well, almost non-existent. Glufosinate is almost non-existent at the moment. Glyphosate's slowly coming back, but it'll be a while. Then you look at inert ingredients. So 2,4-D and some of your adjuvants, some of the products that they use to formulate that is not an active ingredient, there's a shortage in those. And some of it is due to the freeze in Texas. The plants that manufacture that product isn't running because they haven't been able to fix it, right? There's not enough metal pipe, there's not enough welders, there's not enough whatever. So they're having a difficult time getting that done. So you've got both of those happening shortage-wise. Logistics, again, trucking, barges coming over here, you know, I can't remember the exact number. They said barges that were in the United States, but it's about 75% of the world's barges were sitting off U.S. ports waiting to unload. Well, the problem is those barges have to go back, right? They have to take something back to reload, to bring something back this way. So if they're all sitting here waiting to unload, they're not doing their job going back and forth. Again, then it's just not our industry, right? I got a buddy who bought a Peloton bike, purchased it at Thanksgiving. It was delivered in April because they were waiting for one little chip that they needed to come over from China that took that long for it to get here. COVID-19, the state of California shut every port down. Long Beach Port is one of the busiest ports for ag products besides fertilizer to come through. The union shut it down. We can't unload barges. You can't move product. You don't get product in your pipeline, right? Then the freeze, and I just put Texas on here, but Georgia and Louisiana was impacted as well. They have plants in both those states, Mississippi. Those southern plants, southern states that we have those plants, they were impacted, but Texas definitely was hit the hardest. And in our world, that has slowed us down quite a bit. Like I said, there's not enough pipe to fix it. There's not enough welders to weld or work on it. And they're working as fast as they can, but it's going to take some time to get it back up and running. Then the funniest thing that I've heard, it came from one of our chemistry manufacturers, and then I got to digging into it, and it's the truth, and more companies are having this issue. Polymer. There's no polymer to make jugs. There's no polymer to make caps that go on top of the jugs. The totes, depending on what size you have product you're getting, there's no polymer because it's stuck on barges somewhere trying to get unloaded, and so they're running out of that. So they haven't been able to keep up with their package demands. So that impacts you. You may have a tank full of product, but you don't have any jugs to put it in, or you don't have caps to put it on the jugs, so you can't fill them, and that's impacted some guys. Cardboard. And one of my friends from FMC says it's due to Amazon. That's what he's going to blame it on. But there's not enough cardboard to build boxes for them to put their jugs in. So it's all kind of starting to snowball. And then plant shutdowns. That has been, UPL's plant in India blew up, which is another reason glufosinate tight. But these plants do shut down, just like with fertilizer, to make sure they can do maintenance and do some other things. So when we look at this world as a whole, there are 62 active ingredients, AIs, allocated at the moment. So when a company allocates a product, that pretty much means there's none left, or there's very little left. I can tell you that we got about a third of the glufosinate products that we need in a year allocated to us from our manufacturers, right, that we deal with. I know that my competition and others did the same thing, right? So there's just not enough product to get it, so they start allocating it. Of those 62 AIs, 212 products made up of that AI are allocated or completely sold out, and they will not do production the remainder of this year. Now you say, well, that's not a whole lot in the scheme of things. It is when you start looking at the AIs that are allocated. A lot of it is corn and soybean products that are used, and it doesn't matter if it's a branded company or a generic company. They are all the same, and they're being allocated the same. They're being they're short of product all the same. I mean, it's across the board. It's not has no rhyme to reason, and it's not playing favorites. The two products that we keep being told here that are going to become very tight and right in time for rust and wheat: fungicides and insecticides. Okay? And so, for those of you that are on here that may get some corn rootworm or have the beetles or got some alfalfa and you got some weevils to take care of, whatever, you might want to think about getting your insecticides in, because I can tell you that those actives are already tight. Trying to find them is very difficult. And fungicide, right now I've got a guy that called me right before this looking for some fungicide to spray some wheat, and I can't find that product. There's some other products I can get, but I can't find the product he wanted. So highly recommend, looking to get those two products in as fast as you can. So here's the Long Beach port I told you about. This was on March 15th. I got a buddy that was down there, works for CHS, works for our wholesale division. And so he was down there looking at the port and took these two pictures. Well, took the one picture and then sent me the computer screenshot from the guy that's in charge of the port for us on some things. So the one in the picture itself, those are barges all sitting out just outside Long Beach Port, waiting to come in. I can't say that they're all crop protection products or anything that have to do with agriculture, but it's a barge sitting there, right? That still has to get unloaded, which is going to take time away from the stuff that we want, and or could have been a barge going back to get stuff that we need. The top screenshot, all the green bar dots were barges that were sitting there waiting, had been there for, I think it was 2 weeks. Red were over 2 weeks. Blue was under, I think, a week, if I remember correctly. And the purple were ones that were in port waiting to be waiting to be unloaded, but hadn't been secured yet. So with that, Nick, that is all I got. I will take any questions if you got them.
That was great. Thank you so much, Fred, for giving us that information. It's going to help a lot of our farmers make some decisions as the growing season comes roaring ahead. One thing I did have a question for you, and I'll also encourage anybody who is on the call to either put some questions in the chat, or you can go ahead and use the question and answer the Q&A chat that's down at the bottom of your screen. If you just scroll your mouse over it and click, a little pop-up window should come up, and just throw ahead and throw your questions up there and we'll get them to Fred. But the question I was going to kind of go over is, you had Mosaic enter into some countervailing duties earlier this year, and some tariffs have been placed on some phosphates. What does that have to do? Are we finding it harder or just more costly to bring in some of those phosphate products now because of that?
Yeah, it's definitely more costly. It's also became a little harder on some of it, right? Part of that's gamemanship, I'm sure. But the prices definitely jumped due to that. And I mentioned that, I didn't mention who it was, but yes, Mosaic is not playing hard. It was playing some hardball with us at times, right? And some others. So the one thing I'll add, and I said it on the fertilizer side, 8 to 18 months, I see the same thing in CPP, and I really see that being 18 months. My biggest fear as a retailer right now is not having product to reload as we get through the season, right? I think I've got enough product to take care of my customers and anybody else that shows up. But once our season's over, I'm not sure we're going to have product to reload, which is something that I make sure growers understand that if we can come up with a plan faster, and I don't care what retailer it is, right? If we can come up with a plan faster, knowing what you need, we have a better shot at getting it.
So looking towards that future without being able to reload, what's the best option for our farmers to really look forward towards the future, making sure that they have those products they need, not just for this year, but for in years subsequent to that?
Sure. I know they all plan. I mean, I deal with a lot of them, and they all have a plan, and sometimes that plan gets changed. But if we can have that plan and kind of stick with it, that helps. Being flexible, you may want product X, but hey, I can get product Y. It's the same thing for the most part, right? There may be a little different, but for the same thing. So if you can be flexible, that always helps. Conversations with your agronomist, your retail partner, I mean, that's going to help them forecast what they need and bring it in.
Great, thank you, Fred. And also, I guess I missed this opportunity. You can also use the raise hand feature, and we can possibly link you in, and you can ask a question to Fred live. Unfortunately, Eric had to drop off. He had some other commitments that he was scheduled to be on. So if you want some of those updates about Brazil and some of the other weather stuff, I have put the link for his website, for his newsletter, in the questions and answers. I'll also put it back in the chat so that you can go ahead and sign up for that. and then get that information from him since he's no longer here. But if anybody does have a question, please throw it up in the chat really quick before we come to a close. We've got about 4 minutes before the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time as they were able to break away from planting, which I know is extremely important this time of year, and get your questions taken care of. And if not, we can get you back out there in the tractor and putting corn in the ground if you haven't finished up. So, all right. Well, we have recorded this, so if you do want to go back and see some of those websites, see some of those apps that Eric was using, or go back and see some of the slides and the information that Fred had presented, you can be able to find that on our website, and we'll also put it on our YouTube channel as well at coloradocorn.com. And so feel free to come back, take a look as it will be posted. If you haven't had a chance to sign up for our kernels, it's our e-newsletter that goes out every other week. We announce these things in that as well. Please take time, go to the website and sign up for that e-newsletter, and you'll get the latest and greatest updates coming from coloradocorn.com. So without any other questions, I think, thank you so much, Fred, for joining us here today, giving your time and providing us with that great update, informing our farmers of what's going on in the crop protection and fertilizer realm.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. You guys have a good day.
And thank you to everybody who joined us today. We really greatly appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedules. Have a great week. Have a great rest of the season. And here's to you prospering over this year. Take care.